Scripted show. We've got wedding photographer extraordinaire Cliff Mountner here in the studio with us today. We're going to have some great unscripted conversation with him. A little bit of house cleaning in case you think you missed us in October. You didn't. We were actually live at the Photo Plus Expo show where we had over 30 programs live streamed that are on the Nikon Live site now. So make sure you go in and tune into those if you didn't see those before. Some great programs, great inspiration, great learning. This is a great time of year for holiday sales, so make sure you look at the Nikon website, USA website, because we got all kinds of great deals that'll save you a lot of money with early access sales events going on right now. And know that the Z50 mirrorless camera is out there on the street and you want to pick one up while you can because that camera is really hot. A lot of things going on here in the building, getting prepared for the holidays, getting prepared for the CES show, which we are going to program at again, lots of programming there. But for now, let's get going with our interview and welcome Mr. Cliff Mountner to the show. Thank you, Cliff.
You're so professional. What got into you?
I know.
I don't understand. Off the air, you're like, a lunatic.
Only the first 5 minutes.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, I got to act, it's like meeting somebody for the first time.
It's nice to pretend.
Where'd you come in from today? A little bit of Philly, PA?
Right outside of Philly. My studio is right in Haddonfield, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's where the wedding business is.
Well, that's where my studio is. My studio manager, Heather, maybe she's watching. Somebody has to. And just happy to be here, man.
So I always like to start off by talking a little bit about your past and your history and where you were born. Just imagine somebody tuning in doesn't know who Cliff Mountner is. Where'd you come from? Where were you born?
I was born in the Bronx, so I'm a native New Yorker. My parents got me out when I was about 3.
That makes you a Mets fan
That
because you're a New Yorker?
I admittingly, yes. We all have our flaws. I was a Mets fan growing up. My dad was a lifelong Yankee fan, born, raised, grew up in the Bronx, everything. He was a diehard Yankee fan, probably watched every game ever. Joe DiMaggio was his hero. My hero was Willie Mays growing up, Jimmy Connors, and I was a big tennis player, baseball player. But they got me out of there when I was 3, grew up about 20 miles south of Manhattan, east central New Jersey, Old Bridge, New Jersey, Middlesex County. And then I went to college when I was 18, never came back. So right outside of Philadelphia, Glassboro State College, which is now Rowan University. And started working, we'll get into that, but started working for a small newspaper when I was 19. And then when I was almost 21, started working for the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I've never moved from that area, the Delaware Valley.
I definitely want to delve into the career because I think a career path is so important, whether you're into weddings or not. Now, you chastised me before for calling you a wedding photographer because you do far more than that, right?
Yeah, well, yes. Yes, I'm known as a wedding photographer, but I started out as a photojournalist. When I was, I've told this story before, but when I was 19, I was in school and I was dead broke. And my parents thought I could live on $25 a week stipend that my dad would send me, but looked for a job. And I saw an ad in a newspaper that said, award-winning weekly newspaper seeks photographer.
Why photography, though?
I loved it.
What was your path? And when
great
was the first
question.
time you picked up a camera?
I was 7. And my family had a vacation in Washington, D.C., and I saw everybody holding cameras up and looking through the viewfinder. And I looked through my dad's old Sears rangefinder camera, and I looked through it, and I'm like, this is so cool. Now, it was too expensive to allow a 7-year-old to carry, so it was like $1 for a street vendor's camera. It didn't work, obviously, but I remember looking through that little teeny hole, and I just thought that was so cool, and I was kind of hooked then. In high school, I dabbled, photography class in high school, and darkroom, and all this other stuff, and then always had an interest, but when I was 19, I had no experience whatsoever. Walked into this place. It was a weekly newspaper. They produced 6 weekly newspapers in 3 different counties. It was called Cam Glow newspapers. I had no experience. I had a pulse. That was the reason I got hired. $75 a week.
That's
Saturday, back then, sure. Saturday and Sunday, I processed and printed all the stuff that the reporters shot, what I shot. It was a hellish job. And I cut my teeth there, and 2 years later, started working for the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Talk a little bit about
15
this,
years.
because I think your background as a journalist is, correct me if I'm wrong, help that basis for you being very successful as a wedding photographer, correct?
It gave me a foundation of understanding the importance of the decisive moment, capturing moments, working with people, places, and things, a pretty good understanding of how to tell a story. And that's what a wedding is, really. You got a beginning and you got a middle, you got an end. That's what's very appealing about a wedding.
Storytelling is storytelling.
Yeah, well, that's correct, and it gives you a foundation for that storytelling. But also, being thrown in, being thrust into any situation, and being able to come out with a picture.
Right. So you cut your teeth with the first newspaper. That kind of got you going as a photographer.
I was really bad.
And then you
also.
graduated to one of the bigger papers in the country, the Philadelphia Inquirer.
And learned from some amazing mentors, Larry Price. People like Sarah Lean and my dear friend who I spoke to on the way up, Brian Grigsby, who was my editor, who I owe a lot to.
I was going to say, Brian's your greatest influence.
He was, without question, early in my career he was, because he was like a surrogate father to several of us. It was an army of photographers that the Philadelphia Inquirer had to infiltrate the suburbs.
Right.
And it was a circulation thing, it was an advertising thing. That was what was driving circulation and advertising. And we would go out and do the most mundane assignments possible and try to make them look interesting.
Right.
And so instead of mailing it in, he really had us take pride. He taught me how to take responsibility for myself as a photographer and as a young man, because otherwise we'd run amok. He was tremendous.
Were there photographers that influenced you at that time
Hell
in
yeah.
journalism or in general, photography in general?
I would say, people like Larry Price, Michael Bryant, Eric Mencher, John Costello, April Saul, these people that we would, Kyle Keener, these people that we would see the beautiful work they'd produce and how they went about their lives every day. Michael Viola, old-time photographer, photojournalist who wore a suit and tie every single day, worked at the Inquirer for 40 years, originally used the speed graphics to shoot journalism.
It's like our good friend John White.
Yeah.
You never see him without a suit, tie, jacket, and camera.
So these are the people that influenced me, were mentors, and taught me how to carry myself in this craft. And I'm grateful really to those people.
Newspaper photography, day in, day out, may not be the same as some of the exciting jobs you would have gotten along the way, right? You had to, like you said, you made the best out of certain assignments. Can you think back to remember a time that was really exciting, or a story that was really exciting, or things that you loved to do as a newspaper journalist?
I remember one story I like to tell is when I was in Liberia, West Africa. Okay, it was originally for. It was an enterprise piece, which simply means you had to sell it afterwards. But I went with Operation Smile in '89 to Liberia.
Right.
And I was there for about 3 weeks. And I was 27 years old. I was clueless, man. I got to admit. I had no idea how to carry myself in a third world country. And met a Peace Corps volunteer, got a guide, and I followed a young girl who was 9 years old that was ostracized from her village because she had a cleft lip, cleft palate. Did that story, but the real story is this. Going throughout this country with basically a piece of paper that allowed me to run around this country from the Ministry of Information by this horrible regime, Samuel K. Doe.
Right.
6 weeks after I left this country, there was a revolution and a civil war.
Right.
And I was going around this country thinking, I didn't have a worry in the world. If I had gone through that country 6 weeks later, I might not be here, because they killed a lot of people, and they would have slaughtered me too.
It sounds like very dangerous conditions.
And I didn't know it. I was just too naive.
It's funny to think back then, but I can't not bring up back then, no cell phones, no computers.
No.
Really difficult ways of transmitting pictures, back in the day.
Transmitting. I was shooting Kodachrome.
And so you brought the film back, or did you have somebody run it? Or
No,
did you take it to a local
it was all E6.
bureau?
It was all K14. I brought back all the slide film, brought it back, Inquirer processed it, and here's the funny story. None of it ran, because Tom Graylish, our beloved editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer magazine, believed that it didn't work quite completely as a picture story. I disagreed, but those are the things that, big disappointment in my career, not to have such a wonderful story. To this day, I think I did a good job, but it wasn't good enough for a publication like that. So you live and learn.
So 6,000 assignments?
Yeah, about 6,000 in 15
Inquirer?
years.
I did my homework.
The Inquirer, yeah, you did.
Lots of stories.
Yeah,
and 6,000 assignments
Scares me
is
where
a
you're going to
ton.
go now.
But Yeah, so at that point, you have to make a shift in your career. What makes you leave the newspaper business to move on to wedding photography and starting that business?
It's called corporate layoffs. So the profits due to newsprint circulation diminishing, advertising revenues down, they kept talking about the price of newsprint and all this, but really it was just economics. So there was a round of layoffs, and they decided that, I believe it was around 18 different photographers in 1998 were going to get laid off, and I was one of them. And at the time I had infant twin daughters, Allison and Samantha.
Yes,
my
beautiful
pride and
twins,
joy.
right?
They're my world, you know. One's a senior at Rutgers. One's a senior at Temple. They are, you know, if they're watching, they giving them a shout out. I'm sure they'd be happy.
No? They'll tune in at some point.
Hopefully they're in class, but that's beside the point. Otherwise, what am I paying for tuition-wise? No, it was a scary time because they were infants. I had a house, and fortunately, all the contacts I made at the Philadelphia Inquirer all those years, Subaru and Comcast and Virtual Health and Kennedy Health Systems, I had a nice corporate business going. And so it wasn't like I was flat on my belly. It was sink or swim. Basically, they would push me overboard, and that's when I flourished. That's when I decided.
Business degree? How do you run a business when you've never run a business
I had
before?
an undergraduate degree from law justice from Glassboro State College. That was it. And I was clueless. So the context and the people skills, and it was the sink or swim type of mentality where you evolve or die. And so I had a little bit of experience shooting weddings.
Right.
A friend of mine gave me an opportunity to assist her and shoot a couple weddings for her. And I said, and this was in 97, 98, and then I said, screw this, I can do it myself.
Right.
So in 98, I started shooting weddings full time, still doing corporate work, and to this day I still do corporate work. And so diversification was critical for me, doing as many different types of things. And early on, I got to be honest, I was working 14, 16 hours a day, shooting weddings on the weekends and shooting corporate work and processing and printing, working until 3 o'clock in the morning, drying prints. Here's a good one for those that remember shooting film. Printing film in my darkroom downstairs, batch printing 50 headshots for a hospital, turning on the lights and seeing a damn speck of dust and having to start over printing that stuff again. We talked about dust down here. Having dust in the darkroom, dust was the enemy back then.
Right.
And so, you know, all those things.
Anti-static cloths, blower brushes.
Terrible. Terrible. Between the canned air and the anti-static cloths, and but the frustration of just the dust. I don't miss film at all, and I really love the organization of digital. For me,
I feel like I was born for digital.
Yeah,
you know, that instant output and instant gratification, but instant learning.
It's been a
on the
boom.
fly.
We'll talk about that eventually. But
yeah,
I cut my teeth there, and I had no business experience. I was an artist in business, not a business person in art. And I took my lumps, man. I really did. I'm not too proud to say that there were a lot of things I failed miserably at.
As two 57-year-olds, though, knowing the older business, should we
What the hell are
have
you
people
telling people
Google
that
what
for?
E6 film is?
Well,
what a darkroom is? You think our producer Brian knows what a darkroom is?
He might. I don't know. He's got a nice webcast system right there, but
It does.
yeah,
No, listen, it's a lot of change. There's a lot of technology.
evolution.
I was always like fascinated. My dad, who started off with 8x10 cameras, that went to the medium formats and 4x5s and rollies and all these different iterations of cameras, eventually ended up as a digital photographer and loved it. It's an amazing business and the way it's transpired.
Evolve or die. That's really what it is.
Talk a little bit about, you make this decision, and listen, I do take my hat off to you because the courage I have is to work for a company like Nikon, 35 years now, and being just happy making sure I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. You start a business though, how do you build? You build it from the ground up, you got to find your property, you got to find your people. How do you stay successful? How do you start it and continue to stay successful?
Fear is a good motivating factor, I got to be honest. Fear of no net, no steady paycheck. There's no guarantees, and I think what's kept me afloat is being able to produce good work, good customer service.
Yeah.
That's so, and for people watching, if you're a photographer trying to make it, don't think images are going to really make you money. It's a start, but customer service and some business savvy is really going to help you. Now, we can sit here and we can talk about social media, we can talk about advertising, we can talk about marketing until you're blue in the face, which I'm not really adept at. I've just adapted, and I'm no model of marketing by any stretch
of
of
the
the
right people
imagination.
around you, though.
I do. Well, my studio manager, Heather, is spectacular, and she allows me the freedom to live a lifestyle, first of all, that I live,
Right.
which gives me some freedom to play golf, things like that. I don't sit behind a computer because I know what I'm not
golf,
good at.
really?
Yeah, well, we could talk about golf.
Yeah,
but,
we will.
I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not. I'm not the person that's going to sit and process the images to completion, do the retouching, do the album design. I can't do it. I don't have the attention span, and I don't even have the wherewithal. I make pictures.
But you're
and
the
talk to
artist
people.
from
Yeah.
beginning to end. You're
Yeah.
going to put out for that wedding, prior to the wedding,
Yeah.
to the very end of the wedding,
Yep.
before you take that last photo,
Yep.
you're going 1,000%.
My job
I've seen you work
is
before.
my job is to obviously shoot the events, download, backup, file management, call the weddings down, talk to people, and then hand it off to Heather, and she does everything else brilliantly. So she allows me the freedom to take care of my clients in other ways.
So I've been to your studios, and they're quite impressive, and I love the way you have things set up, and I love the way you have everything set so when someone comes in, you can show them the work, you can start that,
Yes.
that relationship with the clients that you have. But I've always found it fascinating because I admit, I've admitted before publicly, live, the whole wedding thing, man, I take my hat off to any wedding photographer because it's one of the most pressured jobs in this industry, is it not? But talk about that a little bit, but then take us on a journey of what does Cliff Mountner do on a wedding day from the moment you wake up or preparation to that last shot that you take?
Well, my preparation really hasn't changed over the years. I will say the mental preparation has changed because, and for any wedding photographers who or might be watching this, the nervousness, the nervous energy you feel leading up to that wedding is very real and was very real for me for a couple of years. And it takes time to get over that, but I'd say keep it because there's an edge that you're able to maintain. If you don't think about it, I think you're going to make mistakes. I don't get nervous anymore before a gig at all, but I do think about it. I do make it a priority to prepare, whether it's gear checks and cleaning lenses and making sure all the cards are in the right spots and it's really important from batteries, okay,
Sure.
Especially these days. Just make sure everything's in your bag, ready to go. So that's just a routine. Once you build a routine, that's one thing. Mental preparation, I've never been one to have a plan. So you've heard of the guy with the plan. I'm the guy with no plan. I don't.
Is that a journalistic thing? I mean, you're going in to find that story as it's unfolding, even though there's going to be a wedding, there's going to be the kiss,
Yeah,
there's
you
going to
know
be all
there's
these
gonna
things
be
you
that.
expect, but you're looking for other things.
Well, the way I say this to clients, so let's say someone's getting married. One of my favorite venues is the Bellevue Hotel in Philadelphia. Famous, historic Philadelphia landmark. I've probably shot, I don't know, at least 80 or 90 weddings there, okay? A good part of my weddings have been shot there, or the Rittenhouse Hotel, wonderful places. But I try to forget about the last 70 weddings I've shot there because if I go in, with this closed-minded attitude that I know where all the pictures are, are going to unfold.
Same thing over and over
I don't
again.
want to have a template
Right.
or a recipe. Otherwise, I think that's A, cheating the client, and B, cheating myself. And the creative process doesn't work on paper. You can't plan for stuff. And if you plan too hard, I think part of the creative process is definitely going to suffer.
Right.
And so I try to forget about that and let things come to me. It comes to me in two ways: light and compositional scenarios. The client just happens to be that subject, that element that interacts in front of my light and composition.
Right.
And that's where the creative process begins.
Talk about, you bring up light, the
Yeah.
importance of light and what
Yeah.
you do, and how do you approach that throughout a wedding day? I mean, we talked about it for many
Yeah.
years, right? People
Yeah.
relied on high ISO, and then what happens? Even high ISO and crappy light, you're not making
Crappy
good pictures.
light's crappy light, man.
That's right.
And one of the things in my workshops, shameless plug, the difference between the quality of light, and you and I have discussed this a lot, the difference in quality of light and the quantity of light, they are vastly different entities. And today's cameras, I mean, you've got right here, I can go into a situation in very, very low light, but if the quality of the light is there, I can make beautiful images. And so I don't think people understand today that just because there's enough light to take a picture doesn't mean they should.
Right.
They need, I try to find that edge of the light to create texture, dimension, and mood, juxtaposing shadows and highlights. Again, this is all stuff I talk about in my educational stuff. But
But I want to take a step back because it's not a shameless plug.
Yeah.
Workshops are a big part of your business,
Yeah.
right? And helping sustain
they have been over the years,
within
yeah.
the business. And you know, we always talk about this, the importance of understanding fundamentals.
Yeah.
That we've been going to the wedding and portrait photography show for how many years now? Decades I've seen you there?
Yeah, I've been there, yeah.
Yeah,
A little while.
and I think, you know, through the years, you see a lot of great accomplished photographers, you see a lot of hungry people looking to learn. Talk about the importance of the fundamentals and knowing these fundamentals to get you through a day.
Well, here's what I see. I'll just say what I see now. With the advent of these wonderful mirrorless cameras that we have, I think it's too easy. And maybe you can call me a curmudgeon or an old coot.
Curmudgeon,
You can call it, yes. But I think it's too easy today to pick up one of these cameras, look through it with an EVF, electronic viewfinder, get a proper exposure, get an image in focus. And too often, people think that's good. Just because you have an image in focus and exposed properly doesn't make it good.
Of course not.
No attention has been made to composition. No attention has been given to the quality of light or where that light's even falling from a dimensional or directional standpoint.
Right.
And it's too easy to make a photograph that's in focus and exposed properly. And that's where the fundamentals are lacking today because it's too easy right now. I think
not for everybody. Let's preface by saying
of
a
course
lot of people
not.
dig into
Of
learning,
course
but some
not.
people use the technology as a bit
Yes,
of a crutch.
and I think that's why it's so wonderful that we have these tools because the learning curve is not as steep and people can get better faster. That's to be, I know I'm better. I have, my work has improved leaps and bounds once I got that thing in my hands.
Well, again, instant playback with digital was the first step towards being able to see things right away, and certainly having the opportunity to learn by seeing, right? You mentioned the electronic viewfinder, that instant gratification of playback, and being able to see that through the camera now and through the viewfinder while you're shooting is phenomenal.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a great learning tool also.
Talk a little more about technologies. You bring up mirrorless. Now again, as a manufacturer, of course, it's our jobs to make cameras that work for people, that are simple. We go back to those days where the first cameras we shot didn't have anything other than manual, advanced lever, click, maybe a motor drive. We've come a long way. Talk a little bit about that transition in technology and where you sit now and what you're doing now in the way of cameras and lenses.
Well, one of the things it's done for me, besides making me better, besides going into a ceremony and being, first of all, they're quieter. You have, even the mechanical shutter is quieter, but now with the silent mode, this is giving
on
me,
the mirrorless
yeah, it's given me an opportunity. For example, with the Epson Corporation and an advertising agency called 31,000 Feet, I've been able to go in and working with Shaquille O'Neal, who's an Epson spokesperson
You're doing
now.
a campaign for them?
Yes,
You've done
yes.
several shoots so
I've
far?
done several shoots for them, and it's allowed me to do some behind-the-scenes stuff for their commercial shoots, where I can go in and shoot silently, simultaneously when the cameras are rolling, and give them some behind-the-scenes stuff they didn't even know they needed, and they've been using it a lot for social media. So I've sort of created a little market for myself there in allowing them to have images that maybe they wouldn't before. Also going into a wedding ceremony, completely silent, which is really wonderful. But overall, my arthritis in my neck, which is pretty severe from 37 years of carrying gear, the gear is lighter, it's easily transportable, smaller. Listen, I can go on and on about the benefits of my Z6 in my bag, and you know, the high ISO performance, blah blah blah. I don't want to sound like a commercial.
No, but I think it's important to know what are the things in this technology that really drive you to want to use the camera.
Well, first of all, the Z6 is my workhorse now.
And to be clear, you shoot both DSLR, D850, as well as the Z mirrorless, and you work lenses between both cameras.
I absolutely do. And you know, the FTZ adapter has allowed me to still use my old glass on my Z6, and I also have Z glass. So my 850 is still used at every wedding.
No holds barred, and it's unscripted, but really, seriously, I had great experiences with the FTZ adapter. People jump into adapters. I don't want to use an adapter. They're crappy. They're garbage. The experience for you with the adapter?
Well, the 105-1.4 is my favorite lens that I have ever used. I think it's the best lens Nikon's ever made. Some people
Second now to the Nikon.
Well, I haven't had the opportunity to try it, so I can't say. I messed around with it at Photo Plus for about 10 seconds. I had to leave because I had a wedding the next day. I wanted to play with that a little bit more. Hint, hint, Mr. Suarez, can I have one? Mark Suarez will definitely send one down.
We just called out my boss.
Yeah, Mark will send one down for me, no problem. I'll shoot a bride with it.
Yeah, why not? We'll just send you 10 of them. How's that? But again,
one of them will do.
Talk about DSLR when, mirrorless when.
Well, I use the Z6 for everything, except for when I'm shooting some family portraits with a speed light, and except when I'm shooting in a completely dark reception, because I think the 850 will give me a little bit more, outperforms it from a really, really low light focus perspective.
Right.
And it's still a very relevant tool in my bag, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I love using my 850. Great camera.
You pack for a wedding day. Pack a few cameras. How many camera bodies do you take?
5. I bring 5, yes.
Just in case?
2 Z6s, a Z7, an 850, and a 750. Because the 750 is still great when I'm just doing some on-camera flash reception stuff. It's light as hell. I can hold it above my head. I use the tilt screen. I use it for horas, Jewish traditional dance, and I can hold it like that and just make some pictures that way. It works great with a speed light on camera. It's fantastic. So all 5, and I have a D4S in my trunk as a backup. So it's really 6.
So now talk about the lens compartments. Which focal lengths are the most important to you throughout the day?
Well,
and when?
At the beginning of the day, I'll use my 35 S lens, the Z series, 35-1.8 on one camera body, or my 24-70, depending upon how much light is in the room.
Right.
And my 105 1.4. My 105 hardly ever comes off.
Right.
It is, you know, there's things I can do with that I can't do with any other lens.
That is the de facto portrait lens.
For me, it really is.
Right now.
It's. Now my old favorite was the 7200 2.8. Okay, the G.
Right.
Okay, but now it's the 105 1.4 because it does things that the other one could not. I can isolate with this. In terms of throwing things out of focus, I couldn't do with the 7200.
Wide side? What are you doing on the wide side?
On the wide side, I would have to say my 24-70, the Z series. It's pretty spectacular. I don't have the 14 in my bag. I do need to try that. Hopefully, I'll get one consigned and probably buy it.
Why don't you call out my boss again and ask for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
Well, I own everything in my bag,
That's
Mike,
good.
except for my Z7, which is consigned at the moment.
We love you for that.
I own everything in my bag. Yes.
How many weddings have you shot? I'm curious.
Jesus. Probably, I've been saying 1,200 now for a year or two, so it's over 1,200.
And we talked about avoiding redundancy by not going in with any premonition.
Yeah.
You know, but you know what go-to shots you're going to have to make.
Yeah,
Did you ever miss a kiss shot?
No.
Come on, tell the truth.
No.
Did you miss a great important shot and you kick yourself and
I suppose
expose it right here to everybody?
I can't think of anything in particular. You know what I did do?
That's a good thing.
Here's one. One of the things I learned, I have like an Uncle Charlie rule that I try to explain to my clients. We're not mind readers. So many years ago, there was a bride who had Uncle Charlie who was in a wheelchair, who was sitting in, you know, somewhere away from the speakers in the front, and he was a very unobvious subject. And I didn't get a picture of him.
Right.
And she complained that I did not get a picture of Uncle Charlie. And my question was, well, how the hell did I know that Uncle Charlie was supposed to be captured if you don't tell me?
Right.
So now I try to explain to clients, and wedding photographers, this is a great little tip. I say to my clients, listen, at the end of the night, I'm going to go up to you and say, I don't want you to say, oh, damn, we should have gotten a photo of us and so, because I'm going to ask you that at the end of the wedding. This way, there's no regrets. It's kind of a no-regret clause.
All bases while
Absolutely, because I'm not
check
just
the boxes.
Yes, there are compulsory aspects of a wedding that you need to capture. Otherwise, your clients are going to be disappointed.
I've had that before too, because I rarely shoot a wedding. Every once in a while, I'll do something for a friend or something that's pretty quick. and there was a bride and groom. We don't want any, we want the ceremony and we want a couple shots. We're not going to do any of the traditional things. I said, don't you want like group shots of family members, things like, no, we don't want anything of that. And I talked them into it. And true story, sadly, months later, the groom's father passed away. And immediately came and, we need all the pictures of the groom's father. So sometimes I guess you have to talk people into the things that they may be missing, or they think they don't want them to ruin their type of wedding they're going after, but they really need them.
It's our job not to give them what they want. It's our job to give them what we think they need also. And here's one thing I'll say, and this goes, this is a good lesson, and this is one of the things I talk about in my workshops. For me, today especially, I shoot more for my clients now than I used to. Meaning, back in the day, I was hoping to make really amazing images that would make my heart sing, that were for me. I have to combine that with the needs of the clients, and I think it was Diane Arbus that said, for me, the subject is more important than the picture. I think too many photographers today, they try to be clever, they try to make photos that impress other photographers for social media, and I don't think that they pay enough attention to the needs of the client. I see these photographs that contain layer upon layer upon layer that are very clever, but they don't say anything about the client. And half the time they're not going to appear in an album because the client, they'll look at it and say, I guess that's a cool shot, but we can't see ourselves in it. Sure, I make a few images that are interesting and clever once in a while, but not every wedding is shot for a competition. It's shot for family legacy and an heirloom, and that's kind of what I think about.
So dare I ask, and you don't have to answer this, but I can't not ask, what's the worst clients you've ever, what, Bridezilla, Groomzilla, whatever, have you ever had that really bad experience shooting weddings? I ask you that too because the last 2 weddings I shot were last year, believe it or not. Again, I don't do many, but I promised my nephew on one side with his bride-to-be, and my niece with her groom-to-be that I would shoot each of their weddings as their gift, right? And you take pride in this, right? I want to make sure that I deliver something that's nice, it's a nice gift, and one was a very conventional wedding, and the other one was a wedding where they were getting married on the top of Killington Mountain in Vermont. Now that one gets me excited because the plan was to shoot the wedding and then we'd mountain bike down.
I remember you telling me about this one.
But the first one was so conventional, but the thing that bothered me the most, which is probably why I will never go into a wedding business, is with the advent of other imaging devices and cell phones, I felt like every person that was there thought that this was their event to shoot. And arms came in the way. And how do you deal with this kind of stuff in this,
one word,
realm of wedding today?
Surrender. If you don't surrender to what's going on in the world today with regard to everyone sticking their hands in the aisles and all those things, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
I did. I drove myself crazy. Every picture that was posted on the internet was crooked or from an off angle from what I was trying to get, or a woman named Jay was there with me. We were shooting together. Every angle she shot that was beautiful and perfect. An image from a cell phone or another device was posted, and it did not.
Not to mention the fact that the client's going to see those photos before yours anyway. Okay, and that, I think some of our magic at times, back in the days of film, they would wait a couple weeks before they see the images, and then they would see them, and it was magic to these people. The magic is a little bit gone now because they see these instantaneous images from these devices that I think devalues what we can do at times. And it's our job to maintain that value and demonstrate the value with the quality of the images and the storytelling itself. Capturing the emotions, anticipation, reaction to the images that are in front of us and the emotions, that's the only way we can maintain value. But to answer your question, instead of the negative, I'll try to focus on some of the more meaningful weddings and whatnot, and I've shot a lot of them. Recent. I did a 4-hour wedding about a month ago of a couple who were in their early to mid 50s. I never asked exactly how old. The groom lost his wife, I believe it was 2012. They met at work. It was an amazing love story. You can see how much they wanted to marry each other. And I can't remember the last time I was that happy to be a documentarian at a wedding. And
that's special?
There's feelings that we get as photographers sometimes that still put goosebumps on my arms. And here's a little dirty secret to everybody out there. We're only as good as our clients. And I say this all the time. I'm not going to make these PPI every single best we can at things that might not be terrible. Better do a damn good job at those. Comes from.
Any on air?
Like, you know, down every time. So
it shows you how much I'm stressed down.
It's the diversification, you know, shooting other things, the work with Epson and Shaquille, you know, those corporate clients and those, you know, some of the editorial work I still do, you know, that keeps me in the other game as well. So
take a quick step back to WPPI.
Yeah.
I'm going to toot your horn. You've won many awards, including a Lifetime Achievement Award, many awards. So I wanted to give the audience, anybody that goes to WPPI show or enters competitions, what is it that the judge in Cliff Mountner looks for in a photo?
One word from me, first and foremost, and it's even first on the judge's criteria, okay, impact, okay? An image has to knock me out of my seat before I'm going to really score it off the charts. It's happened a couple of times, and those are the things that I look for. Those are the images I yearn to see as a judge. And I judge for selfish motives because I get better judging.
Right.
Seeing these images and critiquing these images and seeing what's out there, seeing what the best art in the world, in the wedding and portrait world look like. It makes me better. And I would encourage everybody that goes to WPPI to attend the print judging before the actual convention starts.
So the people that go to the show can actually watch what
yes,
the judges are doing.
It's free. It's free, and they hear, you know, some wonderful judges commenting and teaching their teaching moments. Every single image gets a comment.
Right.
Every single image is a teaching moment. So.
Anybody in the room that you judged harshly on a photo that stood up and said, "You're an idiot"?
I've been accosted in a few bathroom breaks.
Oh, that's a great point in time to be bothered.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And, you know, said a few things and went back to judging. But, you know, being accosted in the bathroom is not the time to talk to a judge.
We call out to our audience for questions ahead of time.
All ears.
And before we run out of time, I want to make sure we at least got to a few of them. This is fascinating so far, and truly, I mean, again, I've known you for decades, and the work you do is so strong. But what I love about you more is the passion going into each wedding day, but that desire to educate.
I want to touch on that for a second, really, like for about 60 seconds is the passion.
Brian says we can go as long as we want. We want to do this for 2 hours.
Yeah. Anybody who knows me knows that I do bring a very distinct, I'll call it a distinct passion to the table. Some of that passion has been mistaken in the past, and I'm going to, you know, venues, other vendors, filmmakers, right, I want it right. But I also think it's what's helped me making sure that everything, and that's where an EVF is really because I think it's going to make.
All right, so some of it's a little hard, so sometimes I spell them out.
Hit me with
it. And it's by O Snaps He Creates. But what do you do to draw clients in?
Well, the website is the window into your business. Basically state that I am no marketing expert by any means. In fact, it may be the weakest. Instagram right now, I believe, most curated, most recent of your work should be on Instagram.
Many art directors and artists or people looking for photographers go to Instagram.
Brides.
Brides and grooms, right?
Yes. I lead them now to my Instagram page. Website, yes, I think my site is solid. It's got some of my favorite images. And also I think it will show a level of consistency over the years that maybe Instagram, you got to go, you know, some of it's buried a little bit. But do not let Instagram go. It is a very, very important curated version of your work.
Now that's the current day, but T.Kopel, Kopel, asks a really important question too. Before all this, how did you land clients in the early days?
Relationships, still relationships. Relationships with other vendors, play nice, okay? Maybe I didn't always, but I have probably the last 10, 15 years. I think I'm very easy to work with, and connections, and take care of venues. Take care of wedding planners. Take care of wedding filmmakers who ask for a couple high resolution images.
Word of mouth that way.
Yeah, well, of course. And release your images to people who want them without complaining about it. Oh, this magazine wants this, or this venue's used my images. Well, yeah, let them.
As long as they tag you.
Play nice, exactly, exactly.
Your phone number out.
Play nice.
Yeah, I would think relationships in all aspects, from vending to food to cakes. To
network, handshakes, have lunch with people. There's an old school way of continuing to build relationships that is not, it's not terribly old school, it's still current.
Right.
People still pay attention to that. It's important.
I love this question from Ashley Gola. Ashley, G-O-L-A. What inspires you to come up with new ideas for photo shoots? That's a great question.
Well, my clients, first of all, like I said before, if my clients display and depict a particular emotional reaction in front of me, that gives me chills and that inspires me to no end. Being able to capture that, but also films. Oh man, films. I don't really look at other wedding photographers very often, you know, but I'll say it, there's a couple Nikon ambassadors. You know, who doesn't love McNally's work? Dave Black is probably, I don't want to embarrass him, my favorite photographer. His work, his light painting specifically, blows my mind. I'm trying to incorporate, when I can, a light painting at some of my weddings, because I think it gives me a leg up. It's something different, not only to give the client, but also marketing-wise. Hey, you're getting married at this farm estate. Let's do a light painting. And people have no idea what that really is. So I get inspired by trying to produce something a little bit different. Certain other photographers, certainly films, some TV shows, seeing how people, but light is really what drives me. Light, to me, is the end-all, be-all.
Yeah, there's so many incredible photographers.
Deborah Sandage. Let's look at her stuff. My God, I look at her stuff. How prolific is she every morning?
Travel and landscape photographer.
Yeah, just I look at her stuff.
The colors that she generates and the work
just
she
today with
produces
the double exposures, the multiple exposures in camera at, I mean, poof, my mind is blown.
Yeah, I must say that I'm inspired by all the ambassadors and a lot of contemporary photographers and friends of mine that I grew up with. And I guess the testimonial of a shot that you make that's great is the one I wish I had in my portfolio or on my computer that somebody else takes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great compliment to any photographer.
Yeah.
And images that stand the test of time.
Absolutely.
If you can make a few that stand the test of time, I think
the
that's...
ones you go back and look at time and time again, and you want to share time and time again.
And I think anybody, I was talking about this with my friend Eric Mentor, who's a great Instagram photographer. E-Mentor is his handle. If you can select 6 or 7 images per year that you really like, that's a great crop. That's a lot.
And when you say per year, that you take to the bank is the ones you will go to your grave with as your best work.
I have about a dozen over my entire career that I feel stand the test of time.
I think that's a fair number. I don't know, maybe I have a few more than that. I think there are moments in each of the genres that I've shot in that I look at and I go,
well, I can, but here's the thing, not to blow smoke up your butt, but the stuff you've done with your drummer love, I'm a rock and roll freak. And the Tommy Lee stuff, okay, and some of that drummer love stuff, they're memorable images that stand out in my mind.
I appreciate that, but this is about Cliff Mountain.
Yeah, I hear you, but you know, people should know.
This is a good one. I'm going to spell this out. It's JKD, PHTGRPHY photography.
Okay.
Tips for the first wedding shoot. What tips would you give for that first shoot?
Keep in mind that they hired you for a reason, okay? You're going in there and you're probably extremely nervous. They saw something in you and in your work to you to do it. So don't get paralyzed by nervousness. I'm afraid to say, hey, what's really important to you before you go in? And then
that is key. That is every question that was out there. We had a ton of questions this time. Obviously, you have a lot of follow. Some great time, some great learning.
Thanks, brother.
Things that I've done to research you, despite this being unscripted, I still do my homework. And even though I've known you for 20 years, there are so many things I learned statistically about you and the things you've done in 6,000 assignments at the